Steve Bruce, thank you so much for joining us after your appearance on Hawksbee and Jacobs this afternoon. We're sitting along Wembley away. Wembley Stadium is here in the background. It's where Manchester United won the FA Cup final just a couple of months ago. Does that constitute a successful season for Man United last year, winning the FA Cup?
Well, I don't think just enough to win it. It was nice to do it, and obviously it's kept the great thing for me. It's kept Ten Hag in the job. Look, Man U have got to be competing at the very high end of the Premier League and in the Champions League. That's what the club demands. That's what all the supporters and the new owners now specifically want. So it helped. It's been a little stepping stone, if you like, but there's a lot of work to be done. And as I said, Man U have got to be in the Premier League and the Champions League.
You mentioned a lot of work to be done. It's been announced recently that Erik ten Hag will be staying on for this season. Is that the right call from Man United in your view?
Well, I believe so. You can't keep chopping and changing the manager. They've had something like 6 or 7 in 10 years. You know, I think Ten Hag was dealt a bad hand last year with the amount of injuries he had. You could see as soon as these big players were fit, then how better they were, i.e. the cup final. So let's hope he can get an injury-free. Let's hope the big players can get fit. Let's hope they can get 3 or 4 players to add to the squad, which they need, and start progressing to try and catch Man City.
And just from a manager's perspective, how would you have felt knowing in Ten Hag's position that they've spoken to people like Thomas Tuchel behind his back, they've courted people like Kieran McKenna, the Gareth Southgate link doesn't go away. How would you feel as a manager if you know that a club is looking for someone behind your back when you're already in position?
The build-up to the cup final was all that week that he's going to lose his job. It was that big out there that you had thought it was going to be inevitable after the game, a little bit like Van Gaal. Obviously, they've been disappointing for Ten Hag, but look, they've now made a decision. He's the man, new contract. This is the way forward. They believe that he's the best man for the job. They've obviously hinted a few and thought that. Let's get on with it. Give them the support he wants, because the vast majority of the fans wanted Ten Hag to stay. I believe that immensely in the stadium. So good for him. Let's get started. Let's get behind him and wish him the best of luck.
And if you are Erik ten Hag, you try and get Man United back into the top 4 and competing for more trophies, what player in that starting 11 do you build that team around at Man United?
I think you've always got to build in your core. You know, I think they've had big injury problems. Obviously now Varane has left. They've had big injury problems in central defence. I think they need to go and improve there. I think in the spine of the team, that needs an improvement too. Boy Højlund at the top end of the pitch, does he need a bit of help? So, and the need to recruit well, people who are going to make an impact, and that's the big challenge.
Marcus Rashford has been a talking point this season, obviously not in England's squad for the Euros this summer. You've managed people like Alan Saint-Maximin who played in a similar position to Marcus Rashford. How does Erik ten Hag solve a problem like Marcus Rashford and help get him back to his best?
That was the big conundrum, you know. We've seen what it meant to him in the FA Cup final. This stuff that he doesn't care. There's been times when he's had a frustrating season for Marcus's standards. He's got to now come back, have a good pre-season behind him, and now show everybody again of exactly what he is, because the kid's a fantastic footballer when he's right.
From your side of things, what would you do with Marcus Rashford? Would you put an arm around him? Would you try and give him freedom to roam?
Individually, some respond to a kick up the backside, some belong to a clip around the ear, some need the arm around the shoulder. You have to know the individual, which I don't, but that's the big part of management, of getting the best out of your players.
You mentioned recruitment earlier. They've been linked with Michael Olise from your former club, Crystal Palace. Do you think he would be the type of player that would really flourish at Manchester United?
Well, him and Olise and Eze towards the back end of last season were terrific. I'm not going to say anything against the Crystal Palace lads, but look, they're the type of player that has to go and play for Man U. They're both great players. So I wouldn't be surprised that Man U are going to be linked with 150 players over the summer. Let's hope they recruit well.
And you mentioned earlier about potentially Rasmus Højlund getting some help at the top end of the pitch. People like Dominic Solanke and Ivan Toney are being linked with clubs this summer. Are they the sort of profile striker that Man United should be looking at?
I'm like any other Man U fan. I look at my phone or we look at the newspaper every day. It's somebody different. And that's always the case. They're linked with this one, that one, the other. Let's hope that they pick well. and they can come and make a difference.
And lastly then, if we're sitting here in a year's time, what do you hope we are talking about with Manchester United?
Well, they can't be finishing 8th. They've got to be competing to get into that Champions League. That's why it's a crucial summer for them. They've got to give Ten Hag the resources, which I'm sure they will do, and be battling at the top end for Premier League, for the Premier League, whether it's too much next year, but got to be looking for the Champions League.
Was ist das? talkSPORT?